a school feeding program designed to combat food deprivation in public elementary schools while improving both nutritional and educational outcomes? This initiative is essential in advancing food and nutrition security, supporting underprivileged students, and fostering the sustainability of the food system. In this episode of Ethiopia in Focus, I will be speaking with Dr. Fitsum Assefa, Planning Minister, a member of the National Macroeconomic Committee, and an Executive Committee member of the ruling Prosperity Party on social inclusion and poverty alleviation efforts that the government is undertaking. Dr. Fitsum, welcome. So over the past 6 years, it has been a common theme that the government has been working very much on the topic of creating multidimensional prosperity. And when it comes to the thematic areas of social inclusion, shared prosperity, and creating a generational agenda, the Prime Minister has been very consistent, not only in his vocabulary, but also in the initiatives that he has jump-started. To start off our conversation, let's unpack what multidimensional prosperity means.
Thank you, Bilene, for having me on this important conversation. Multidimensional prosperity, the concept has been around for a while, and of course has evolved from the traditional sustainable development concept, where there are 3 dimensions to development: economic, social, and environment. But multi-dimensional prosperity, adds several other dimensions and aspects to the traditional dimensions of sustainable development. And of course, it has economic dimension, where material well-being is really important, including income, well-being, consumption, nutrition, housing conditions, shelter, and all the traditional material well-being indicators. It also has social dimension, where education, access to education, health quality education are important, but at the same time, social protection and inclusion are really important aspects of this dimension. When it comes to multidimensional prosperity, again, political and democracy dimensions are included, where participation, equality, freedom, sense of belongingness, are really, really important. Equality, both, if there is perceived as well as actual inequality, it will result in disrupting social cohesion and unrest. So it has really become important in that regard. Dignity, being someone, in a community is also an important dimension.
Aspiring for something and
exactly.
In creating an enabling environment that aspirations are met.
Exactly. It also has environmental sustainability dimension to it, where everyone has the right to live in a clean, green environment. Public spaces, safe public spaces, what we are currently doing, for instance, in city rehabilitation projects and initiatives. So multidimensional prosperity is not only what an individual or a community have, but what an individual or a community become. Cohesive, inclusive community, open economy, and more, political, social, and economic aspects are included in multidimensional prosperity concept.
In a recent engagement that the Prime Minister had, a public engagement, he raised the issue of the terminology of prosperity. This was related to the naming of the ruling party. But he was saying that prosperity is not just the name of a party, but it's also the aspiration of the government in terms of where it would like to take society, and it becomes a collective aspiration. So this is the discourse on prosperity as part of development is really a huge departure from the poverty or tackling poverty narrative and discourse that we were engaged in prior. So just to follow up on this, what are the policy reforms that have been undertaken to ensure social inclusion. If we can just share a little bit around that.
Sure, you are right about the shift in thinking framework. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, and instead of focusing on tackling the poverty, working on building your capabilities and your potential and your endowments really will take you much further. So having that big shift in the thinking framework in development management and really aspirations and dreams that we have for this country. There are several reforms, both policy and legal frameworks that have been introduced and, of course, improved and revamped and streamlined to ensure social inclusion in education sector. For instance, new education policy that really speaks to some of the SDG goals, for instance, an international commitment that we have to include all community, like anyone, whether have the capacity and or the means to pay for schools, should have access to universal education. So one of it would be the policy change on really providing preschool, pre-primary school education through public investment, which has never been the case in previous times. So since the past 5 years, we have that policy shift. We have the community-based health insurance policy, for instance, access to quality health services, and anyone can just walk in and get any medical services, any medical attention without having to pay out-of-pocket expenses on the spot. So such policies of social inclusion, access for trainings and other related social services. And there are several other policies, in fact, economic reform policies that empower the medium, small and micro enterprises to really be more inclusive in terms of financing them, in terms of availing land for their businesses, again, rural finance, and of course, other policies that address rural development aspect of the economic development. So several policies have been introduced to ensure social inclusion.
But let's get a little bit deeper in terms of what is being done. So in your perspective, how have Ethiopia's development programs and interventions been effective in addressing food insecurity and poverty alleviation and addressing the needs of the most vulnerable?
So, all our policies and interventions and initiatives are guided by our people-centered policies and plans, be it the 10-year development plan or other derivatives of it. So these people-centered policies and plans have well-being of our citizens as top priority. And speaking of well-being, food security and poverty alleviation come as top priority. So, of course, poverty alleviation is much broader than food security, but food security is really an important dimension of poverty alleviation. So in terms of food security, the focus that the government gave to agriculture sector in the past 6 years is unparalleled to any other time, history in this country. So agriculture sector really enjoyed, policy priority, investment from the government. So, of course, again, the agriculture sector has significantly increased in production and productivity. Now, last year alone, the production in the agriculture sector has surpassed, 1 billion quintals. But if we further, dive into the industrial and most tradable high-value crops, in the past 5 years, we have witnessed an increase of 200 million quintals of, major crops. Major crops. So that really addresses food security, right? Of course, this wouldn't have been possible without our, for instance, National Wheat Initiative, where our wheat production has increased from about just 50 million quintals 5 years ago to 230 million quintals last year, which of course makes us the largest wheat producer in Africa. Again, Ethiopia has been in the business of, ensuring nutritional security, not only food security.
So the leap from 50 million quintals to 230 that you've mentioned is really an astounding figure in terms of the aspirations to be self-sufficient. What was not being done before, and what has enabled this productivity or this leap in productivity?
Yes, it's really a breakthrough. I usually call it wheat revolution, so to speak. So, the challenge were, not being able to see, the capabilities and the endowments and the potentials that we have to be wheat self-sufficient, and even more being able to, export. So those endowments were, we have, ample arable land lying out there and not being utilized, especially in areas, in some of, the pastoral areas, which were previously deemed unsuitable for wheat production. So one of the things that we have done is, looking into those potentials and utilizing those potentials. Another thing is, our agriculture has been hostage to rainfall variability. So it's by and large rain-fed agriculture, but we have lots of water. So we have never optimally utilized, the water to irrigate our lands, and we wait for the rains to come and then leave our land in between the rainy seasons, idle lying there. So now, with a strong leadership from the government and from, His Excellency, the Prime Minister, we decided to invest on irrigation, especially on small scale irrigation. Another challenge is we used to really, made to believe that land is so fragmented, and such large scale production of such
it's not possible.
It's not possible. And I want to mention here, His Excellency the Prime Minister's statement that always, that really remains in my head. Land is fragmented in our heads. When we go in the fields, land is not fragmented. Of course, land holding is fragmented. So if we can convince our farmers to do cluster farming and do the proper extension services and have proper investment on technologies and modernization and mechanization. So yeah, that's what happened in the past 5 years. And so
it's a shift in a mindset. Exactly. And a culture of how we're approaching development. Exactly. And productivity.
Exactly.
You had mentioned earlier on about nutrition, and again with what has been done in that sense, because it's a shift in mindset as well.
Exactly. The livestock sector in Ethiopia is big in numbers. We have the number one. We are number one in terms of the number of livestock that we have. But when it comes to per capita consumption of milk, eggs, or any other, livestock products, we are among, the lowest in the world. So the challenge is, it's not modernized. No improved varieties of, for instance, the livestock, animals. chicken. This initiative of the Prime Minister, Elemat Rufat, made us again think about it, okay, we're becoming self-sufficient in wheat and cereals, but that's not enough. Food security has evolved to include nutritional security, and we have to bring some protein to the, tables of our citizens. So that's why this initiative was introduced, and it has been 3 years now. So we have seen increase of 20 to 45% in milk production, meat production, eggs, honey production, even fish production in the past couple of years. And we are also really seeing the impact in the market. Prices are really stabilizing, price of eggs, price of meat.
This supports the social inclusion agenda by offering mass produce in a sense.
Exactly, mass produce, but at the same time, household level, small scale household level food security should be ensured. So that's why, this Elemat Rufat starts with, smallholder households, especially focusing on women and youth, creating, millions of jobs, distributing, for instance, day-old chicken to the improved variety of sheep, goats, and, milk cows to women. Some organized as, micro businesses. And we're seeing lots of improvement in lives and livelihood as well, in addition to the, food and nutritional security.
So for those segments of our audience that do not understand what Elemat Rufat is, in English, we refer to it as Bounty of the Basket. And this is a prime ministerial initiative launched about 3 years ago with the intention of maximizing productivity at the household level on poultry, on dairy production, meat, fish, and honey productivity as part of efforts to enhance nutrition at the household level. So, Dr. Fitsum, in parallel to initiatives like Elemat Rufat that are also enhancing food security and maximizing food provision at the household level, urban farming is also something that has been popularized. And in fact, within your own ministry, utilizing scarce land has been something that you had also jump-started. So maybe if you could share a little bit about that, and then we can proceed with our conversation.
It's also really an area where we haven't seen, we had potential in some of the cities elsewhere. Urban farming has become really an important provider of food to the families as well as to the whole economy. So the urban farming initiative initially started in ministries and public offices. As you mentioned, in my office, I happen to have half a hectare of land. So I have organized women, earning the lowest in terms of salary in my ministry. Also included some 100 women, vulnerable women from the area where my office is located. Then, we have managed to invest a little bit on the vertical structures, water supply, even fish pond. So now those women have established a cooperative, have a saving surpassing, I think, 200,000 by now. They harvest every Friday, and we buy food. For instance, I buy fresh organic vegetables from that farm. It's just half a hectare, really impacting lives of more than 100 women, income as well as food security. So that has, of course, again transpired to other segments of the society. Now you go to some people's houses, a really small place, but they use vertical structures, any equipment they have around. So they plant green vegetables and really use them as part of their food security.
And schools are also taking this up. So as part of a generational agenda, you see that spillover effect. In fact, within the grounds of the Office of the Prime Minister, where the Prime Minister had also launched this initiative, this has been an ongoing thing for the past 4 years now, with enabling, small or those that are, in terms of income, are not gaining that much, to be able to have fresh and accessible produce right from the Prime Minister's office that's cultivated on a lot of land that was previously not utilized as well. So let's talk about how some of these measures and the reforms and the programs that you indicated align with the global goals, the SDGs, for example, and Agenda 2063 as well. How is Ethiopia faring in that regard?
Ethiopia has always championed such global commitments because they are really wonderful development frameworks. And if we really aspire to deliver to our people, adopting those and incorporating them into our plans, mainstreaming them was really, an important aspect of our planning process. And so that's what we did. And globally, the SDGs were evaluated at UN level, and performance is disappointing globally. The UN has already declared that none of the goals are on track, and it really requires lots of concerted effort if we have to come into track to achieve those goals. But coming to Ethiopia, our investments, our reform, and our policies and priorities being people-centered, proper, and welfare-centered, we had a better chance to achieve, those, to be at least on track to achieve those goals. Mm-hmm. So I can mention some of the goals. For instance, Goal 2, Zero Hunger. We are really on the right track. This has been acknowledged by several international organizations as well. I have mentioned that in just 5 years, in high-value industrial crops, we have managed to increase 200 million quintals, right? So that plays huge role in achieving zero hunger in the country. But again, this has its own impacts. Climate change is coming more frequently, and extreme events of flood and drought, has impacted us recently, right? So in Ethiopian history, drought and flood usually translate into hunger, famine. But for the first time in Ethiopian history, the drought that has happened in the past couple of years, didn't, translate into hunger, because we had enough food produced elsewhere, and then we managed to really distribute food to the people who were affected by the drought and flood as well. Another goal that I can mention is Goal 3. It's about health and well-being. So in that regard as well, especially maternal and child health, we are really in good track. Also, surpassing the regional average as well. African countries' performance is around 50%, but ours is more than 56% as we speak. For instance, maternal mortality has reduced from 401 in 1 million live births to 273. So this is huge achievement, right? Again, child mortality has also declined from 67 to 47 from 1,000 live births. So this is also a huge achievement in terms of, goal 3. There are other goals. For instance, education is also goal 4, quality education. So the new education and training policy that really anchors in, changing the challenge of, lack of quality in our education system that has been here for long. So again, investing in pre-primary schools. The World Bank itself has commended Ethiopia's approach of investing in pre-primary schools. We have built more than 30,000 pre-primary schools across the country.
Very short time frame.
In very short time period. And now the net enrollment has surpassed 50%. In just 5 years. This is an amazing achievement. So it has lots of impact on quality of education.
Together with education, can you perhaps expand on the nexus with nutrition? Because there are efforts around that as well.
Exactly. One of the challenges of learning outcomes is food insecurity and nutrition insecurity. So what we did in the past 5 years was expanding school feeding, so that kids come to school and of course be able to eat. So we are providing 2 meals a day for close to 9 million kids across the country. So this means a lot. It addresses food security.
It's huge.
Yes,
it's a huge number.
Exactly. It addresses poverty, but at the same time improves learning outcome and, in terms of quality education as well. There are several other, SDG goals. I can mention, for instance, gender equality. In terms of gender equality, what we have achieved in areas of representation in the political arena, in the executive organ of the government, but at the same time, resource and right has also improved a lot for women. So we have improved our global ranking from 124th to the 70th, 5th in just 5 years in terms of gender equality.
So Dr. Fitsum, let's talk a little bit about infrastructure development, and in what ways is the government enhancing social inclusion through infrastructure development?
The most important, I think, wealth and income redistribution instrument that exists is infrastructure development. So infrastructure development provides public goods for every citizen from all walks of life, whether able to pay for the services or not. One is, for instance, road infrastructure. Road infrastructure has Ethiopia's road network has increased from around 124,000 kilometers to 171,000 kilometers in just 5 years. So an addition of around 45,000 kilometers. Out of that, around 75% serves the rural community. You can imagine, the connectivity it creates, access to market, access to health services, access to education, and other basic economic services. So in the past 5 years, we were able to really increase access to roads, and around 10 million citizens have now access to road in just 2 kilometers from where they live, and this is, really significant achievement.
Very impactful.
Yes, very impactful. Of course, this is about roads, but urbanization and housing and city rehabilitations have also been defining features of this past 5 years. The city rehabilitation and urban development program that we call corridor development that we are seeing in our capital, Addis, and in several other cities across the country is really addressing SDG 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. So we're providing infrastructure, road infrastructure, improving mobility, not only for cars, for private cars, but improving mobility in mass transport. Of course, providing decent pedestrian lanes, cycling lanes, encouraging non-motorized transport. Of course, several parks, green areas, which all citizens access for free, which they wouldn't have if private sector provided such parks on payment basis. It really is heartwarming to see lots of people on the streets of Addis every day with their kids walking, enjoying in the parks, which really shows the improvement in quality of life because we are providing that safe and green public space to our community in the cities. Mm-hmm. Urban space is, hub for future economy, politics, social development. We are going towards anyway, so we have to prepare ahead. And of course, there is in urban development, there is also high risk of inequality, happening, the high risk of segregation happening, high risk of exclusion happening elsewhere. We have seen that. That's why, Ethiopian government has been so deliberate and, of course, conscious about, ensuring inclusive, urban development, so to speak.
So let's expand a little bit the conversation on urbanization. At the rate of urbanization, not only in Ethiopia, but throughout Africa as well, why is it a priority and important to focus on what we're focusing on right now?
For starters, the urban sector is, contributes to more than 60% of Ethiopia's GDP. So all the, important service sectors and other important economic sectors are based in urban sector. But at the same time, Ethiopia is urbanizing very fast, though the level of urbanization is low. It's far above the African average of, rate of urbanization. So we have to get ready ahead of time, ready in terms of infrastructure, ready in terms of, other important public spaces that would give the required service to the, the very fastly increasing urban population. So it's not, it's not wrong to prioritize urban development and urbanization. And again, creating sustainable, smart urban areas, urban spaces, part of, the SDG development goals as well. So, creating green, clean, smart and sustainable cities, livable cities, providing service for, for its dwellers is really important. And so we're getting ready for the future, but at the same time to provide, standard services to the dwellers of our time.
Of our cities. I think in a way with the accelerated rates of urbanization, what we may have witnessed over the past few years is also the proliferation of shanty areas and slum areas around towns. What are the efforts to address these within cities?
Yes, I think again, one of the really the heartwarming, things to see in Addis is rehabilitation of those slum, shanty, miserable areas where our most vulnerable senior citizens and of course other people live in, and improving those areas and seeing kids now play in those areas in playgrounds that are provided through the rehabilitation program. So in Addis alone, thousands of houses were renovated or rebuilt again from scratch. Aware village is one of important demonstrations of the government's commitment to integrate those areas into the larger city renovation and rehabilitation and corridor development. So the people who were living in really miserable housing conditions now have state-of-the-art standard houses with kitchens, all facilities included, washrooms and other important spaces for public gatherings, and spaces for their kids to play and develop. So in Addis and elsewhere in the country where such urban development is happening, those shanty places, those slum areas are being rehabilitated and reintegrated into the urban development efforts.
It's a really commendable work that's being undertaken in terms of offering dignified living, particularly for a lot of slum dwellers. Can you share some figures around the initiatives on low-cost housing?
Hundreds of thousands, honestly. For instance, there is a huge shift that I have to acknowledge in terms of policy. I have to compare these numbers. Before the change in the government in 2018, we had this low-cost housing, condominium house projects, investment by the government. So in 18 years of the project lifetime, the amount of housing units we built were only 350,000 housing units, close to 350 housing units. But in just 5 years, just because of the shift in house development, housing development, and really encouraging the private sector through public-private partnership, joint ventures with private sector and other innovative approaches, 1 million, more than 1 million housing units were added to the already existing housing stock across the country. In Addis alone, several initiatives, building, 60,000, for instance, housing units just with joint partnership with only one of the private sector, but several other private sectors are working on building several hundreds of thousands of housing units, affordable housing units, to address the middle class and even the lower income class of our society.
So those are really fascinating numbers, particularly in terms of the efforts that are being taken to maximize access to dignified living. But let's get a little bit more into other infrastructure that is facilitating social inclusion. So you had mentioned healthcare, you had mentioned education as well. What about in telecom? What expansions are being made to facilitate social inclusion?
Talking about telecom, especially as a provider of infrastructure so that the digital economy thrives, the past 5 years, have witnessed tremendous, achievements. The numbers are really huge, so to speak. For instance, we have reached from less than 50% of access to mobile services to around less than 50 million, around 45 million to around 83 million population now has access to mobile access. Around again now close to 50 million has access to internet, network. So this really enabled the digital economy as well, financial inclusion again, but at the same time, ensuring universal access in telecom sector has also been one of the priority agenda on our table. In that regard, rural connections in several waradas, for instance, there are very remote areas, pastoral areas and other remote areas where now Ethio Telecom is providing an innovative, approach of, mobile access, taking, some technological solutions to bridge the gaps. So more than 1,000 Kabbales now are connected through that innovative approach. They never had, mobile access before, but that innovative approach bridged the gap. And imagine 1,000 Kabbales being connected to, mobile access. Again, other digital, economy benefits have been important indicators of this, the progress in this economy. Financial inclusion is one. In the past, I don't know how many years since the banking industry really started in this country, the traditional and conventional borrowers, which borrowed from the conventional banking industry, are around 300,000. But in the past, not even 5 years, 3 years, millions, are able to borrow using micro lending facilities from Telebir and other facilities in the conventional and micro banking sector. Millions again were able to save billions of birr through the digital services. So the telecom service expansion has enabled and unlocked lots of potential.
The leap itself from what you said prior, where we were with about 50 million users to now 80 million users, is a giant leap in of itself. But the most interesting part for me as well is where you're talking about private corporation or private state-owned enterprises, but as corporations also doing their own charitable endeavors, not for profit, but being able to expand connectivity within remote areas is also quite commendable.
Exactly. Ethio Telecom is an enterprise, using the best industry practice to maximize its profit, but delivering on corporate social responsibility, investing on universal access, billions of birr, millions of dollars. So ensuring that every corner of the country is connected. Yeah.
Let's segue to the role of public-private partnerships and the role of the private sector in terms of facilitating social inclusion, because social inclusion is not only a task of the government as well. And just leaping off from the conversation around Ethio Telecom, what are the experiences and how is government facilitating and enabling the role of the private sector?
Private sector, globally has been playing and is playing a huge role in terms of investing in social inclusion. We have several philanthropic, organizations, funds that are even working cross borders, even coming to our countries to invest on capacity building and capabilities in enhancement in countries, in research and development. And in Ethiopia, it has been very low, so to speak, but in the past 5 years, with several initiatives of His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the private sector has now become really an instrumental partner to the government in ensuring, social inclusion. And of course, also in some of the investments in tourism sector as well, the DINE projects. Projects have been an important demonstration of, the excellent partnership between private sector and the government, unlocking the potential that this country has to offer in terms of tourism. But again, coming to social inclusion, the hundreds of thousands, like I can state a number from last year, for instance, 170,000 housing units built for, senior citizens, most vulnerable citizens across the country, were built with partnership with the private sector. So they have financed that. But not only that, feeding centers in Addis, for instance, several feeding centers fully financed by the private sector. There also we see, the private sector delivering on their corporate social responsibilities. Several other projects are also there that the private sector is engaging in. Our urban rehabilitation programs, the corridor development itself, has seen lots of engagement from the private sector in terms of really partnering with the government, providing, services in terms of, for instance, in-kind contributions of their equipments, construction equipments, advisory services, even investing in renovating their own buildings. Yes. The private sector in the past 5 years has shown unparalleled, partnership with the government to ensure social inclusion.
It still has a lot of responsibility and is a committed partner in addressing poverty alleviation as well. One last question from you, Dr. Fitsum. You are one of the key female leaders in government, and female leadership or women's leadership is an important aspect of social inclusion. How are we faring as a country in that regard?
For me, it's amazing. I will have to take you back to, 6 years ago, when I was in Germany at my institute, sitting in my office, and watching live, the parliament where His Excellency the Prime Minister was announcing candidates for, the offices, the ministerial positions. Of course, I was one of the candidates, but I was not informed that it was for such a ministerial position. But it was really difficult to believe the news that came before, the parliament session, which says now 50% of the cabinet is going to be, women. So I really wanted to see, are there really women who really can take such a responsibility? And I really wanted to listen to the names and see the faces. So it's amazing. It really takes a commitment, a huge political commitment to achieve such breakthrough. I say it breakthrough, from usually one position in a cabinet, which goes without saying, which is women and social affairs mostly, to really holding prominent portfolios in the government really required that commitment, and it's really amazing. What always keeps me awake at night is keeping this, because when I see myself in that position, I really want to make sure that other girls in schools and universities see themselves holding that position, and that impossible thing is no more.
So portfolios that usually were never assigned to women leaders. Now defense, we have a Ministry of Defense as well. What other portfolios do you see, not only in cabinet, but outside of the Council of Ministers as well?
Chief Justice, for instance, we had a woman leader there, right? So that's an amazing achievement. Election Board Commission, a huge task. A democratic institution. So that's also one thing. President, we had female president, first female president. Several other positions. Planning, for instance, has never had a female commissioner or a minister. You see that, you feel it, when you come to my office, initially when I saw those pictures of all male from the king's time, through the Derg regime, EPRDF, and now it speaks a lot. So yes, several positions, which were meant, for men,
including at the regional level.
At regional level, now we have a female, the first female regional president. Speakers of House, Council. So we have several positions. It's not. It has now become even, normal and second nature. We have stopped being surprised. Having 50% female cabinet, having close to 50% seat taken by women at the parliament and regional councils. The first female mayor of Addis, doing such an incredible thing to develop the city. So yeah, so this. But what I have really learned from this is what it takes is commitment. Of course, women struggle for equality has been here for hundreds of years, but with commitment, anything is possible, and that's what I see in Ethiopia now.
So last question for you, Dr. Fitsum. What are you most hopeful about the social inclusion agenda and initiatives that are taking place in Ethiopia?
For me, it's the education sector. Some of us probably were lucky to go to private schools and attend kindergarten at private schools, but seeing kids at rural areas who were deprived of having access to such education, early education, early childhood development initiatives. So that really makes me hopeful. I see Ethiopia being really at its rightful position when those kids grow and really take the responsibility of leading this country. And for me, it's the education sector.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fitsum.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward, and as we're wrapping up, maybe something that you want to share with potential investors about what to look out for in Ethiopia, particularly in terms of the processes that we're going in the ease of doing business and creating a conducive business environment.
We have a young population that really is adaptive, that can provide the services. And then EIH is co-investing with one of the largest BPO operator to do a 5,000-seat call center with 3 shifts. We'll be doing 15,000 jobs a day on 3 shifts, and this is pure FX generating capacity. So there are many different opportunities. And as I've said earlier, if you look at Ethiopia of the 1980, if you still think of the Ethiopia of the 1980, don't invest. If you really wanted to understand Ethiopia, look at what's happening today, and there's no more attractive proposition than you have in Ethiopia at this point in time.